Hi, my name is Lindel Hart, and I'd like to welcome you to another in my series of yoga breaks. So today we have some floor-based backbends that we're going to explore, all of which can be very safely done by virtually anyone. What you need to remember is that any backbend has the potential to compress the lumbar spine, which fatigues it and creates tension. And we always want to keep that length and lift in the spine. And when we do any kind of backbend, we want to engage the abdominal muscles, pulling the navel in to get those muscles supporting the lower back so the muscles there don't have to kick in and do the work. So, coming to a comfortable seated position, bring your hands onto your knees. We're just going to do a few breathing repetitions, pranayama. And just a normal breath is fine. So as you inhale through your nose, draw the breath down into the lower abdomen, the lower part of the lungs, and fill the lungs upward and outward from there. And then exhale slowly through the nose. And again, inhale and exhale. And just go at your own comfortable rate of inhaling and exhaling. And as you breathe, I'd like you to think of lifting the spine upward out of the pelvis toward the crown of your head on each inhalation. And with each exhalation, you're maintaining that openness that you've just created in the torso and simply relaxing the breath out of the body without collapsing, without rounding the spine or anything like that. You're just breathing in and lifting and lengthening and breathing out and maintaining. Relax the shoulders away from your ears. Good. One more time. Breathe in slowly and breathe out. So, all of these backbends that we do on the floor, you can take them minimally or you can go a little more deeper into them. And I'll show you options once we get into the poses themselves. But just know that you don't have to go full tilt into it to get the benefit. Especially if doing so, going deeper into a pose, means that you're compressing or compromising your lower back. You never want to do that. And as long as you're keeping your abdominal muscles engaged, you should be in good form. So, watch for a moment. I'm going to give you a quick demo of the first pose, and then I'll guide you through it. I'm lying prone on the floor. I'm going to bring my forehead to rest on the floor. I'm going to use a blanket so that I don't press my face directly into the floor. But you can obviously do it without. Your legs extend back. If you can bring the inner edges of your feet and legs together, as close together as possible, then that's going to be helpful at keeping the legs evenly engaged. Take your arms alongside the body, and we're going to think of the hips as the fulcrum here, and everything just lifts a little off the floor. And then you release down. And I'll give you more detail of this as we move into the pose. So go ahead and lie down, face down on the floor, extend your legs behind you, and if you can, bring the feet together and the legs, the inner edges of the legs together as well. One of the important things that you can do in a back bend to keep the lower back open is to aim your tailbone toward your heels and imagine that you're growing your tailbone toward your feet. So that actually gives a little backward tilt of the pelvis, which opens up the lumbar spine. Go ahead and release your head to the floor, or if you're using a folded blanket or towel, you can place that under your forehead. Bring your arms alongside your torso with the palms open toward the ceiling. So the backs of your hands are on the floor. You're reaching back through the fingers, back through the toes, And let's start with just the upper body. Take a breath in, and as you exhale, float your head and your shoulders and your chest up slightly. It doesn't have to be all that far. Make sure you keep reaching your tailbone back and pull your navel up like you're trying to lift it off the floor. Float your arms up, float your legs up, just a few inches will do, so that you're balancing on your hip bones. And you breathe in and breathe out. Now, I recommend looking down at the floor directly underneath your face to keep your head in a more neutral position, but you can also look slightly forward to continue that arcing of the spine through the upper vertebrae if that feels acceptable to you. And let's take one more breath here. And exhale, release the legs, the arms, and your forehead once again. Let everything relax. Your legs can separate slightly. And then bring your arms forward and have your elbows directly underneath your shoulders. So you have a vertical line from the elbow to the center of the shoulder. And your legs continue to extend back, and you look slightly forward. You don't have to press your head back, but just look maybe even at the space between your hands. So this is Sphinx pose, and I'm going to fine-tune this with you a little bit. To start with, I'd like you to think of your arms, your forearms in particular, being parallel to each other from the elbows to the fingertips, with your middle fingers extending straight forward and your fingers spreading wide apart. This gives you more contact with the surface of the floor or your mat. And then as you press down from the elbows to the fingertips, let your shoulders lift. That opens the shoulder joint. You keep aiming your tailbone and your toes back, and then lift your navel and imagine drawing the rib cage forward between your biceps so that you're lengthening the lower spine and opening the chest simultaneously. The shoulders stay light and lifted, and actually the more you engage the legs, the more it supports the spine coming into this gentle back bend. And you just breathe. If you breathe down into your lower abdomen, you'll start to feel a little bit of that expansion into the floor with each inhalation. And again, you could look forward or you could look down at the space between your thumbs, whichever feels better for your neck. Now, I'd like you to stay in this position for a moment and just watch. I'm going to give you a side view again. And we're going to come up into Bhujangasana, cobra pose. So for this pose, one at a time, I'm going to slide my hands back until my fingertips are kind of mid-chest level. Elbows tuck into the rib cage or into the sides of the body and reach back toward the hips. Tailbone and toes reach back, navel lifts, and as you press into your hands, you exhale and you lift your head and chest. Now, you want to listen to your lower back, of course. So if it feels like it needs to go into just a very gentle back bend, you only come up a little bit. This is just called a low cobra. If that feels good for you and you want to try to go a little higher, you press into your hands and you start lifting the torso. Now, I recommend keeping the elbows slightly bent because it prevents the ears from drawing up into your shoulders and creating tension in the neck and shoulders. So the heels of your hands are more or less directly beneath your shoulders. The rib cage opens forward, the tailbone reaches back, the navel pulls in, and this is cobra. So let's do that together. Go ahead and bring your hands underneath your shoulders and then slide them back a little bit so the fingertips or the middle fingertips are kind of mid-chest level. Draw the elbows in toward the spine. So you're drawing them in toward the center of the body, hugging the elbows in toward the body. As you press down into your hands, reach your elbows toward your hips, reach your tailbone toward your toes, and the toes toward the wall behind you. Now in this one, the tops of the feet are going to stay on the floor. You're not going to lift your legs in this one. You press down, take a breath. As you exhale, lift your head and chest. Look slightly forward. See how that feels. If it feels like that's enough and you don't want to go any higher, stay with it. Right here is fine. If you feel like you want to take the full cobra pose, you're going to slowly press into your hands and begin lifting your torso toward a more upright position. Keeping the elbows from locking, letting the chest broaden forward. The navel pulls in, the tailbone reaches back. You keep that lower back nice and healthy. And you take one more breath in and exhale to come down. Keep your hands where they are. We're going to come back up into cobra once again. So when you do that, you're going to find the degree of cobra that works for you. Now, if you can come up into a full cobra here, I'm going to ask you to watch for a second, and we're going to come up into upward facing dog, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. So upward facing dog and cobra are very closely related. The only difference is that instead of keeping the elbows bent, you straighten the arms, you press into the tops of your feet, and you lift your hips and thighs off the floor. So let's try that. Come down for a moment. Give yourself a little rest. Take a breath in. Exhale, come back up into cobra if that's working for you. As you press into the tops of your feet and your hands, straighten the elbows, lift the shoulders, lift the hips and thighs. So the hands and the feet are the only things touching the floor. And then you take a breath in and exhale, release the hips, bend the elbows, and come back down. Slide your hands a little forward. Inhale, come up, lifting your hips, and press back into child's pose. And pause there for just a moment. Breathing into your lower back. When you're in child's pose and you breathe into the low back, you're assisted by the fact that you're folding forward, because the lower abdomen meets the resistance of the thighs. And when you breathe into that lower abdominal area, the breath can't go very far, so it has to redirect automatically into the lower back. And then slowly bring your hands underneath your shoulders, float your torso up, and come into Vajrasana, thunderbolt pose. This stretches the front of the foot, the top of the ankle. And you can work at opening the chest here if you let the shoulders release back and down. Come up to kneeling, curl the toes under. Once again, sit back. Now you're stretching the underside of the foot, the sole of the foot and the toes, getting another stretch. And then come up to kneeling. Release the tops of the feet down and sit back once again. Shift your hips over to one side and bring your legs forward and come back to that simple cross-leg position. Bring your hands to Anjali Mudra. And I'd like to thank you for joining me here today for this yoga break. Namaste.